G'day and welcome back for another Space Engineers tutorial. Today I'm going to be taking a look at what to do when this happens. And your vehicle ends up the wrong way round. What methods do we have to get our vehicle from this way back up onto its wheels, or if it's a mining ship and you've been drilling down in a hole, back up the right way so you can get out? Because there are quite a few different means available to us, and some of them work better than others, some of them work better in some situations than others. The first one I want to show off is using gyroscopes to allow us to flip our vehicle over using the power of the gyroscopes. This vehicle comes equipped with 2 gyroscopes. Both of them are set to full power, and when I move my mouse around I can move from side to side. What I can't do though is roll. While doing this, I'm holding down Q or E and nothing happens. But fortunately, you can actually get more power out of your gyroscopes if you go to their overrides. Gyroscopes have 2 modes, one where they're mouse controlled and a second where you can override them and control them with either their yaw, pitch or roll. In this case, you can see that I'm tilting upwards and downwards with my roll because of the way that my gyroscopes are orientated on this build. If I instead put my pitch, nope, that's the wrong one. If I instead put my yaw up to full, I will start rolling over, and then I can turn the override off when I'm the right way up. If you want to have this a control available on your hotbar, it's actually pretty easy. All you need to do is grab the gyroscope you were using, and in this case I was only using one, and you can select override controls on or off. So now if I go and flip this vehicle again, hopefully not destroying my cockpit. Now with the vehicle flipped over again, I can press that hotbar command. My vehicle will slowly roll over, and when it's right way up, all I need to do is turn it off again and drive away. Ready to flip another day. For smaller vehicles, particularly small grid vehicles, using the gyroscope to flip is quite an effective method because the impacts between your ship and the ground don't tend to generate that much force, so you don't tend to damage your ship as much. That's not always true for large grid ships. Like this talisman here, let's hop into the cockpit and try and flip it over using our gyroscopes. Go into the control panel, grab a gyroscope, and I will try and figure out which way it is. Nope, it is not yaw. For those of you wondering, you can reset one of these sliders by simply right-clicking on it. Nope, that's the wrong way. This should be the easiest way to roll over. This is working very gently, so it's okay. I turned it off, and I damaged at least my landing gear, but not much else, so I got away with that one pretty lightly. Yeah, I damaged this rear landing gear. And that's all, so that's not too bad. I'm pretty happy with that. Normally with a large grid, there's a risk of a lot more damage than that. The next method I want to look at is using a counterweight to get our vehicle back up the right way. Fortunately in Space Engineers, when you build a block, even when you've placed it with only a single item in it, it has the full mass of the completed block. So if we create a nice long arm here, then stick something heavy like batteries at the end, and then start moving it off to one side, the weight of these blocks will soon overcome the weight that is keeping the vehicle in its current orientation. I like to use batteries for small grid because they're one of the larger small grid blocks that has attachments on all sides, so they're really easy to place, and they're also fairly heavy. You can see the vehicle is starting to tip. And there we go, we're partway there. And then I just need to keep doing that until we get the whole way over. Normally once I'm partway there, I'll start putting a new arm on, bringing it out, so that I can then grind this away, and hopefully the new arm is going to start taking over and flipping this further. If you think about where you're placing the blocks fairly carefully, you can use this method to do this very, very gently. And now that we're past the point of no return, all I need to do is grind these blocks off slowly, and the chomper will be back on its wheels in no time. There we go. Let's Coming back down. Good as new. Ta-da! It's been said to me that this is a somewhat cheesy way of doing this. Which I can't argue with, but it works. So if you need to use it, it's a valid method for you to get your vehicle the right way up again. Another approach to righting your vehicle could be using one of the mobile blocks. So that's the rotor, the hinge, or the piston. Let's have a look at the rotors and hinges first, and some methods you might try to right your vehicle and see if they work. One of the obvious choices is to grab a hinge, flip it around the correct way, and attach a bunch of blocks to it. Now, as those blocks get pushed down by the hinge, it should lift up this side of the vehicle and hopefully get us closer to right way up. So let's grab that hinge and let's adjust its velocity in the correct direction. There we go. And we've hit the ground. Now, even with experimental mode enabled and full torque on that hinge, a whole lot of nothing. I am not getting anywhere at all. It doesn't even make a big difference when I add more hinges. So let's add a whole bunch more and see how many it might take. With 4 hinges, all at maximum force, all pushing, I can kind of rock a little bit to one side. That's it. By extending the arm a bit, I can almost get us over. Not quite though. I think I've got to make it still longer. So part of my issue with the hinges before was that I hadn't made the arms long enough. Let's extend them out a bit further. Hinge 1. Get me that far. Hinge 2. Hey, that's not too bad. I think that's about as far as they'll go. So if I want to keep going, what I need to do next is allow these hinges to push a bit further into the ground. So if I add a little bit of an arm out here, and then push that into the ground, that has actually flipped us over. So hinges kind of aren't too bad. That's not a very expensive righting mechanism that I had to build, and it was fairly well controlled because I could adjust the speed as I was doing things. So I had a fairly good ability to stop myself from flipping so quickly that I end up tearing parts off my vehicle. But I did have to do it with the absolute maximum force enabled using experimental mode, which if you aren't the host of a game, you won't have access to. So what should we do in that instance? Well, that's kind of where pistons come in. They are a fair bit stronger. Let's pick a vehicle that's going to be difficult to flip. This one, because it is nice and broad. So if you're going to flip something with pistons, it's actually quite simple. All you got to do, stick a piston on the side as close to the ground as you can, and if you can with your jetpack, you can sometimes get in there and place an extra block. The closer you are to the ground... Oh, come on. I had it. There it is. The closer you are to the ground, the further this piston is going to be able to push us. So what we can do is through the back of this piston, access it, and click reverse. It's going to push at 0.5 meters a second and get us part of the way there. Next stop is placing another piston in a position where it can support the vehicle and start pushing it further over. You need to be careful with any of these methods that you're kind of not going to flip yourself forward instead of sideways. It'd be quite easy for me with a single piston supporting this, for this vehicle to end up going a different way. And then it really is just a matter of doing this over and over again and getting yourself all the way back over. It's going to be easier to add extra pistons to an existing arm if you make sure you put an armor block at the end of the piston. Oh, yes, there you go. So the one more piston method is definitely a slow, but it is also a very controlled method of righting a vehicle. And you don't need any special experimental mode, you don't need any special tools. It'll always be available to you if you're carrying enough materials for a few steel plate, and even just one piston can be enough. All you have to do then is shuffle the working piston along your line of armor blocks until you can get it to the right position. So while things can be very controlled with a piston, there are ways that things can go a little bit wrong. What you always want to do when building stuff with pistons is make sure that anything attached to them has enough clearance around it. Unlike right here. Because then this can happen. If your vehicle isn't heavy enough, the phantom forces generated by that cube trying to be in the same spot as that 2x1 base can cause some interesting effects. Now, the vehicle that I flipped over with the pistons just before, it's heavy enough that the worst that's going to happen is make me really anxious as the block does that. There are some methods that will be available to you if you're using a flying vehicle that aren't always available to you if you're in a wheeled vehicle. And this next one is one that I've definitely used in the long distant past to try and get home so that then I could flip a vehicle over with other methods, particularly if I wasn't carrying much in the way of resources with me. If you've got a vehicle like this mining ship here that is upside down, you can grind off your thrusters that are normally generating lift and either place the components in cargo or place down the new thruster the other way round so that you've got somewhere to put the materials as you grind them off, because you don't want them all falling on the ground, especially on a server. There we go. We build our large atmospheric this way, then we do the same with the other one, grinding down and building straight away. Don't want any dropped parts that get deleted. And there we go. We've now got all our lift in the other direction, and just so that we don't have the hardest time ever flying, let's take off the cockpit and flip it around as well. I mean, if you're very confident with your flying, you can try doing that, but I'm not going to be successful with that sort of flight. So we just flip it upside down, put it back exactly where it was, hop in, go to third person and pretend like this was how it was meant to be. If you've got no resources and you've got a few thrusters that are still intact, you can use this method quite effectively to get yourself back home where you've got all your resources and then rebuild the thrusters the right way round. Then, what you can do, let's just pretend we've quickly rebuilt those thrusters. Creative mode tools, they were this way around. You go home, you rebuild your original thrusters, then you go up in the air and you do a nice quick roll. And once you're the right way up, land in a confusing fashion because you have to press spacebar to actually land, so you're trying to go up according to the cockpit. And then flip your cockpit back around the right way and it'll be like nothing ever happened at all. That's got to be one of the safest methods I've ever used to get a flying vehicle back home when I've flipped it over, as it is very reliable as long as you haven't damaged many of your lifting thrusters in the crashing incident that led you to being upside down in the first place. I would consider those methods that I've looked at so far as the most effective ways of righting your vehicle. But they aren't the only methods available to you. There are some ones that don't work so well, but might still be worth trying or could be fun for a laugh. Let's try and dig until this talisman in front of me is the right way up, using this mining ship. Digging our way to freedom. Obviously there's a little bit of danger here that I could end up crushing myself with the ship that I am digging out. I'm going to have to be quite careful about that. Oh, here we go, it's tilting. Gotta be careful not to get crushed. Oops. Gotta be careful not to flip over my mining vehicle while I'm doing this. If you are moving a... Oh, jeez. That was close to crushing me. If you're moving a very large ship like this, you will definitely not want to do this with a hand drill. The amount of space I'm clearing out right now is enormous and is only really practical because I'm using a mining ship. If, however, I was flipping over something smaller like my mining ship, using your hand drill would be quite a valid approach. And if you're out of resources, maybe the only approach available to you if you don't want to use the flip the thruster over technique. Diggy diggy hole can be valid. One of the things I find most difficult about trying to ride a vehicle this way is deciding which area needs to be dug out to create the room I need for the vehicle to keep flipping once I've gotten it this far. Because I start wanting to try and dig out under the side that's currently supported by the proper original surface. But what I really need to do is dig further down on this side and try and let it kind of slide into a hole that's curved until it becomes vertical. And then it's about curving it the other way until the ship flips all the way over. Oh dear! Oh dear! So, that was something I wanted to demonstrate. I was trying very hard not to do that, but it still happened. I have been crushed by my quarry. I think that's probably enough of a demonstration of why I consider that method not exactly ideal. Can be helpful to get you a little bit of the way over, or if you're on, like, some of the really horrible terrain, like over these cliff sides, you might be able to dig out enough to allow yourself to roll down the hill and flip over. Which brings me on to another slightly less effective method of approaching this problem. Say you have a flying vehicle, and it needs to be either a flying vehicle or a vehicle with thrusters of some sort. What you can do to try and right yourself is launch yourself off a ramp. So if you get in front of your vehicle, line up your block about right, and then give it a little bit of a tilt. This is just using a standard armor cube, and you don't really want to use the 2x1 slopes oriented to gravity. What you want to use is something that creates a bit more of a gentle slope. The gentler, the better. Or if you've got a natural terrain slope around you, that is also quite a valid approach. And then you want to build this ramp to a decent length, because you want to get up as much speed as possible and enough altitude as possible in order to do the flip. I'm just doing this in creative mode to save a bit of time. You could easily do this with unwelded metal frames as well. There is a bit more of a risk with that though. Sometimes you might clip into one of the blocks and blow it up. But this might well work. Let's give it a go. 3, 2, 1, launch. Try and slide our way on using steering. Here we go. Oh, we clipped something. And then flip. And we're up the right way. I don't actually know what I blew up, but I think it was a cargo container and a whole bunch of other stuff inside. But if you are desperate, you can either use a made ramp or a natural ramp and flip yourself like that. This next method is one that I would say, don't try at home. It is not a good idea, but I'm curious to see if it works. What I'm going to do is stick a large wheel on the side here, as far out from the vehicle as possible. Then we hop in the cockpit, we go into our control panel, find the large wheel, set its strength to 100%, and its height offset as high as possible. Now, when you're in a cockpit and you have wheels, if you press and hold X, it will allow the wheels to compress, then when you release it, it should launch them up at maximum speed to try and jump you. But it doesn't seem like it's going to work. What we might need to do is add a little bit of extra weight out the end here to really push this wheel down. And remember, these batteries are just a placeholder. You can use anything that's heavy, and you do not need to have them completed. You can just place them, and they'll still be just as heavy, even if all you've got is a single steel plate. Here we go. Now we got compression. All right, 3, 2, 1, and launch. Oh, that almost got us over. Wow. That actually kind of almost works. That's unexpected. I really didn't think that was going to work. Hopefully some of the more practical approaches to writing your vehicle have been useful. But if you've got any other ideas about ways that you write your vehicle, any other suggestions about ways that I should try in the future, let me know, because I would love to try out some more bizarre approaches. I do enjoy messing around with trying things different ways. There are likely to be some more tutorials in the coming weeks on a bunch of random topics, as well as all the usual survival videos. So there's all that, and plenty more to come, and I will see you then.